let's begin. And I always start in the same place. And I've thought about taking this slide out, and because I say it every single week. Good morning, Sam. I say it every single week, but within 7 minutes of the time we get started, somebody's going to ask one of the questions I just addressed right here. So I'm going to go over it again, and we're going to keep doing it until we get this straight. We will cover both Usign, GIFsign, MockZign, LogoZign, and nothing else. I don't answer support questions. They have to go to support, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. Your questions are very important, but they have to relate to the day's topic. If they do not relate to the day's topic, then they, I may not be able to address them. I tried my best to answer your questions at the end of the webinar, but sometimes I can't do that. Hi, Joanna. Sometimes I can't do that simply because it may take more preparation than we're able to do in the 3 or 4 minutes that we can allot to that. Because I'm just not going to do that, Stephen. It's just not going to be conducive to do that. So we're just going to have to say it every time, and that's what we're going to do. I don't answer questions having to do with pricing or timelines or other partners' offers. And we are not going to share that document today because it needs to be updated, because we have moved to a new learning platform, which is available at usign.com/learn. And that new learning platform, we have the old links in the document. And so until we get this updated, I'm going to pull that document down. We're not going to be talking about it anymore, but we will get that updated as soon as we can, okay? The next thing that I want to share with you is this little thing called the Visual Marketing Academy. And there's some pretty cool stuff there. Bertrand has put that together, giving you a free access to what is a pretty good training platform to give you all of the basics concerning Usign. And how far we'll go with that, I'm not sure at this point in time, but we'll keep you updated on what happens with that. And hopefully have any of you gone to that Visual Marketing Academy? If you have, just hit me up in the, mention in the chat. Yes, I've done that. So I'm just kind of curious as to how many people have gone in there, because I think it's a really kind of a cool thing that Bertrand's done. And so good. It looks like several of you have done that. Okay. Yes, Ethan, we're live. I do, all you're going to see is my presentation screen. You're not going to see my face. I try not to share that with too many people. And so, good morning, Apple. Did I see you earlier? Okay, cool. All right, but yes, I'm glad that you are going there, taking advantage of that, looking at the things that Bertrand has put together for that platform. I think that'll be helpful to everybody going forward. And then we've also got this little forum that we created that gives you an opportunity. No, it's not a separate account. All you have to do is use your account name and log in, and or use your login. You have to sign in to this. You have to do the sign up, but I'd highly recommend you use the same login. Same thing you can do with the forum here. The forum actually also uses the login that you have for Usign. So you can sign in with your account there. Okay. So the next thing is today. Is that Gene's having more fun creating GIFs every week about our webinar. And today he mentioned that I was buying lunch. So I'm not sure how I'm going to do that. So we're going to pass on that opportunity. But Gene's good reminder to us every week to check in with the webinar, and I think it's pretty cool that Gene calls that the Zine Tower. Pretty awesome. Great creativity, Gene. Thank you so much for doing that. That's pretty special. I'm actually meeting with an amazing guy today for lunch, and we have 2 pieces of art that were done, one in stained glass and one in tile, that are on the National Historical Art Registry, and I'm meeting with the guy who did both of those today. Pretty cool opportunity. He's an amazing guy, and I will be doing he's doing a charity thing downtown, and we're meeting to talk about. I'm going to go down there and do a live feed from his his event, his charity thing he's doing downtown at the end of next month. So that's kind of cool. And I guess if any of you are available, you're welcome to join us for lunch, but it'll be fast. So there you go, Gene. I did mention buying lunch. Okay. The next thing is that Terry did a really, really cool video here talking about pizza. And she had done this for a client. And I like the fact that she said that it was easy peasy using GIF-Sign, because it really is. What I've been trying to encourage you all to do is just jump in, use the tools, figure out what you can do with that, and then help clients to get what they need. And this was a really, really cool little GIF. I can't play it because I just grabbed a screenshot of it. But I'd highly encourage you to go over and take a look at that and see what she did. She did that with multiple images, and it's just a beautiful little little GIF that she created for a client. And I wanted to point that out today. So Terry, great job. Great job. Appreciate that. And then again, another tool from David who reminds us, another image from David who reminds us that he uses Usign, Mocksign, and GIF-Sign to create those images. And I just think they're really cool. The client responded well. That's really, really good. Being able to satisfy the need of a client is pretty cool. Hello. Good morning, Ivor. Good to see you. All right. There's the little shout outs to our community with the things that you have done and shared with us. And I love seeing the GIFs. We went for a long time and we didn't have very many. And so I really appreciate you sharing those with us, because that encourages other people. It sparks creativity. It helps them to understand the capabilities of what they can do. And so continue to do that. I think it's really important that you take full advantage of the tools that you have available to you. And I can't encourage you to do that enough, all right? The next thing is we're still having tons and tons and tons of support tickets, and it's challenging to keep up with that. And interestingly enough, as much as we've talked about the background tool, I had to answer that question twice this past week. And if you just use that search bar, and then people say, oh, I didn't know the search bar was there. And so I'm reminding you over and over again, use that search bar first. Use the search bar before you post a support ticket, because oftentimes that question has been answered somewhere. And all you have to do, if you type in background remove, you're going to see a ton of things having to do with that background removal tool. No, you'll get an email, lady, you'll get an email with a new link every week. That's a great question, but no, you don't have to use that. Don't save that link because it won't work. What you want to do is just watch your email. You'll get a new link every week as to, you get a notification 24 hours out, 1 hour out, and 15 minutes out. So watch your email. You'll be able to, excuse me, get the current link, okay? And there's reasons for that, but which we don't need to get into. But I just really want to encourage you to use that search button when you are getting ready to send a support ticket. Look to see if that question has been answered before. Now, the next thing I'm going to share with you is really important in the community, and that is please close the loop. I've noticed that Gene mentioned the other day that he and I raced to see who can get to our keyboard the fastest and answer somebody's question. And that's we've made a kind of a fun little game out of that. But it's frustrating when you try to respond to somebody's question within 15 minutes of the time it's been answered, and 2 days goes by and they haven't responded back. Always close the loop. Do exactly the same thing you would do in any other normal conversation. And that is, if Gene answers your question, then please say, hey, that worked, or no, that didn't work. Before you send a support ticket, make sure you close the loop and do that. I know that a while back, Gene and I both answered a question for a guy. We gave him the same answer, and he said, well, I'll wait. I'm going to send in a support ticket, and I'll wait for them to answer. It's like, no, please don't do that. The answer is not going to be any different. If you communicate, close the loop, then two things happen. One is it helps this area right here, that person to know that that was the right answer and it did work when you did that. And so if you will just simply close the loop, then it doesn't leave people hanging, including the person who took the time. And we have a great group. We have some people who are incredibly capable of answering most questions that you're going to run into as to how does this work. And we try to help as much as possible in that group to give you the answers that you're looking for. And sometimes, and I've kind of gone to doing this recently, and sometimes I'll ask you numerous other questions. And it's not because I'm trying to be a jerk, it's because I'm trying to help you to do, guess what we're going to do next? Figure out what would happen if you clicked here. Yeah, it's the loop closing is really important. It's just, I think about this. If my wife asked me a question and I waited for 24 hours to answer it, it wouldn't go over very well. If she said, "How does that work for you?" and I went, "I'll get back with you in 2 days." It just close the loop. Do what's normal in conversation, and then just keep clicking. You'll find the answer. Just keep clicking. Somebody asked the question the other day, and I was more than glad to answer this, but how do I create a copyright mark with Usign? And you do it from your keyboard. So Google copyright from my keyboard and find out. Just keep clicking. You'll be surprised what you learn. I'm trying to help you to develop your skill level to the point where I'm gonna be honest with you, I've never sent a support ticket to Usign. I've been a user since day one, and I've never sent a support ticket. Just keep clicking. You'll usually find the answer. Sometimes there's an issue and you might need to send a support ticket, but most of the time the group can help you, and most of the time Clickology will help you. Okay, are we clear about that? Does that make sense to everybody? Let's help to reduce the load on support by simply trying to find answers in the group, trying to find answers from each other, trying to find answers when we just keep clicking. You might be surprised what you'll learn in the process. And I think that'll be helpful. What is this Clickology? Clickology is just a term that I used a while back, and it was, what happens if I click here? I don't know. Click there and find out. And so we've tagged it that Clickology, and Gene and Rose and several others have started using that ology phrase with a lot of things. So it's been kind of fun, and we're having a lot of fun with that. I started with templateology, and then we went to Clickology and all kinds of other stuff. So thank you for asking the question, Lady Yvette. All right, we have a suite of tools, and we're going to talk about 3 of them today. And I'm going to share numerous things with you. We're going to do it at a rather fast pace because some of this I can do just with the screenshots. And I will open up each of those platforms, but I'm kind of going to show you from the screenshots. And I don't know how well you can see this, but if you'll notice right here, this image looks a little, where I come from, we call that Jopwally, but it's crooked. It's not here, and it's certainly not there. This doesn't mean that anything's broke. Remember, this is a beta program, and we're working through making sure that all those things look correctly, but the output was really good. Okay, and again, this is kind of this. What happens if, well, let's take this all the way to the end. Don't stop here and go, well, that doesn't look right. Look over here, see what it looks like, and then download it and see what it looks like before we panic. Just keep clicking and figure out what that is. And that will help you a lot. It'll help you to build your skill set. It'll help you to become a better problem solver. And problem solving is a major issue in design. All right? Sometimes, and I'm going to talk about this one. I'm going to give you some examples of it in just a little bit. But sometimes we need to reposition the image a little bit. And we kept getting the questions about why does the image look skewed? It's because you're taking, and remember this, you're taking a static image and you're putting it in a dynamic program. And when you take a static image and you put it in a dynamic program, it is going to try to adjust that image to fit. If it's way off, then it's going to look Jopwally. Okay, does that make sense? I think that there was the idea that every image will look perfect in the mock-up, and it's not going to. So we'll walk through some of those examples of that in just a little bit. Okay. The next thing, thank you, Eric. The next thing is that we had this come up in the last group or in the last webinar that we did, and I was talking about the frame rate. If you import a GIF into GIFsign, you still get the frame rate down at the bottom, but it doesn't make a difference in, you can adjust that frame rate as much as you want. The GIF's still going to play at its original speed and not the new speed. As near as I can tell, I couldn't make it do anything different than that. Okay. And so that question comes up occasionally, and I wasn't even aware of that because I rarely import GIFs. So I went back and did several just to see that and see if that would make a difference. And sure enough, it does show up, but it's not functional when you do that. So we'll get to the canvas in just a little bit. And I want to talk about an editing tool. I want to put together some editing tools to create. And if you'll notice here, I have done this. I decided to do this with my blogs, and that was to create a universal look while changing the layout and the text. And I'll show you what I mean by that when we get to it. But I did it with using a filter, and it's amazing what happens when you use that filter to accomplish that universal look, which kind of then becomes part of your branded look. And people know that when they see that image, oh, that probably came from Eric. Okay, does that make sense? Hopefully that'll be helpful to you. We'll talk about that just a little bit. Okay. And then the next thing that I thought was kind of cool, I've noticed that my Twitter images look a little different. So I decided, hey, if I can I put a completely square image in Twitter? So I did. And I took the image from earlier and I put it in Twitter, and it looks beautiful. I mean, it just looks beautiful. And so we now have, I don't know when Twitter made that change. I did a little search, and I know that they were playing with it a couple of years ago, but I just started noticing a difference in my Twitter images. Maybe all of you were aware of that, but this gives us a whole new horizon with Twitter when we can put square images there and they look that cool. Now, I did that image for the purpose of making sure that it would look really cool in a square image. But now I can share it on Twitter. So we'll talk about that when we get the canvas open. I have to remind people all the time, begin with the end in mind. Always begin with the end in mind. Now, I didn't have any intention of using this on Twitter, but I knew that what was going to be appropriate for that image is to make it square. So I decided then, hey, what happens if I can do this? Now, that end becomes a brand new thing. I now know that I can use square images inside of Twitter, and that's pretty cool. The image that I used here, and what I found, that's a good question, Sam. What I found was this. The Twitter square images were 505 by 505. When I go to 505 by 505, because I'm getting old, I don't like, that's tiny on my screen. And so I did 1010 by 1010, and that was the output right here. And I thought it was amazing. It's not cropping that, it's maintaining that aspect ratio, and it will handle an aspect ratio that's 1:1. So that's pretty cool. I just thought that was very helpful. To me, it expands my horizon for Twitter images drastically. And the other thing that does is it allows me to use, because I use 800 by 800 in Facebook, because it just seems to fit appropriately on my iPhone. I have to scroll and it fits fine. But then I use that same image in Instagram and I can now use the same image in Twitter. So it's opening up the horizon a lot. And again, I'm telling you this all the time. Stretch your limits. Stretch those. Figure out what can be done and take it as far as you possibly can. So, and that's part of beginning with the end in mind. Okay. Then when we open up the canvas, I'll show you some tips and tricks for cool little things to do today with your in my case, it's the blog post heading, but it could be anything that you want. But I'll just show you some cool things with that. And then I'll do my best to try to answer your questions at the end. Okay. So let me switch the screens here and I will be right with you. All right. Stop sharing the current screen. I thought I was going to stop sharing it. All right. I'm still on. Okay, everyone, if you will hold on for just a second, I'm going to have to refresh for some reason. I love this webinar platform, but for some reason, sometimes that first time I switch screens, hear me? Okay, all right, good. Sorry about that. This is when I redo this, I have the sound in one spot, chat in another spot, and the image in another spot, and I forgot the sound. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate you all being patient with me and allowing me to fumble through that and get to where we need to go. All right. So I have taken a screenshot right here, and it looks fine right here as a screenshot. But when you look at some of these other images, it's going to it does a slight distortion with that, but that's okay. And you look in other places, I can easily live with the image like this, but you notice what it's doing to the logo? It's starting to change that. And so I can go over to reposition and I can pull these sides in a little bit. Okay. If I pull the sides in like that and get that past the square part, now it makes them look more appropriate. Okay, so you're going to have to adjust sometimes your image just a little bit. But when I go over here to the iPhone, it's not going to look right on an iPhone because I've got a square style, almost a landscape style image that is going to give a little bit of a distortion here. Understand that if you've got this size image, then what you want to do is you want to put something in that is going to fit appropriately for that size mock-up. Does that make sense to everybody? This becomes a continuing question, and I want to make sure that we get this clear that you're taking a static image that has fixed parameters. You're putting it in something that makes it dynamic, and so it's going to when you go from landscape to portrait, it's going to give some pretty significant distortion. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now take a screenshot from an iPhone. So give me a second to do that. You won't be able to see me get the image, but I'm taking a screenshot from an iPhone. All right, can you all see that now? I have the screenshot from an iPhone. That's an Instagram account. And when you look at this on multiple iPhones, it looks fine. It looks exactly like it's supposed to. Well, you would expect it to because it's an iPhone. Well, what does it look like on an iPad? When I have it in this position, we've got a little distortion here. Why do we have a little distortion? Because this is a long ways from what we had when we were here. Does that make sense? Because this is an interesting question that comes up frequently. And it's not because there's something wrong with Usign, or I'm sorry, it's not because there's something wrong with MockZine. It's because the image that you put in is a static image, and it's going on a dynamic platform. Just remember that. Listen, I don't know if that's exactly how to describe that, but that's exactly what's happening, okay? So when you go over here to a screenshot, what do you think you're going to have? It's going to look like that, right? So keep that in mind when you're trying to create, using this to create. The question asked here is if I'm not selling to clients using tools for my own business, is there a reason why I would need a MockZine? That's entirely up to you. I mean, it's entirely up to you. What I use MockZine for is to get people's attention. If I don't want people to pay attention to the details on here, but I want to talk about Instagram, then that's a good way to do that. If I just show the image by itself, then what happens is they start looking at all of these and trying to see what's going on there. That's not my goal. That's not my purpose. And so it always comes back to, remember, begin with your end in mind. I make product decisions based upon what's going to be my outcome. Am I looking for something that does this? And if I am, then this might be it. If I'm not, then there's no reason to consider it. But because it's in the core product menu, we will discuss it on the webinars. Just remember that, okay? So are we all clear about the making sure that your image is somewhere really, really close to the size of your mock-up, and that you can't expect them to be like, for example, here, this is an iPhone, but it's turned sideways. It's in landscape mode. That's not going to look appropriate in landscape mode because you're taking a fixed image and you're trying to put it in a dynamic mock-up. All right. I just felt like we needed to do that today. I'm looking at questions that are being asked, and I wanted to make sure that we addressed that one. It's not that there's something going on with the platform. It's because you're taking a static image and putting it in a dynamic platform. All right. Okay, now I'm going to have to switch screens again, so everybody hang with me while I jump off of that and go to the next thing, okay? I'm looking at the time. There we go. I'm looking at the time, and I'm not sure how much time I want to give to GIFsign today, when all I really wanted to do with GIFsign was to talk about the thing down at the bottom. Exactly. Gene's made it very clear. You can't take an image that's 640 and expect it to look good at 1280. That's what I'm trying to say. It doesn't have to match perfectly, Eric, but it has to be, it has to be what would look right. I like your word there, natively. And that's very, very clear. Okay. I'm not going to go to GIFsign today because I'm looking at the time, and I want to spend a little bit more time talking about something that I think will be a better use of our time today. Is that okay with everybody? Or do you have a GIFsign question that I need to answer for you today? I'll give you a second to respond. And listen, don't hesitate to hit somebody up in the group. We'll be glad to help. I mean, there's a lot of very talented GIF creators here, so that'll be good. All right, I'm going to go to the. I'm going to switch over to the Usign platform now. So give me a second to pull that in here. As soon as I figure out where it's at. When I had to refresh a minute ago, I lost that. So give me just a second. While I fumble through things here. You want to put yourself on the spot, do a live webinar. Nothing will put you on the spot like a live webinar. Every mistake you ever make will be magnified. Somehow, oh, there we go. I found it finally. Thank you. All right, let me know if you're able to see that screen. There we go. All right, looks like y'all are able to see that. Okay, let me get this where I can kind of keep track of your questions as you ask. All right, good. This was the little close the loop. And again, I put this at 1010 and 1010. And when you click on here, and you go over and look at Twitter. Twitter's original was 1024 by 512, which is a very rectangular size image. But I've been able to post this very, very well over here. But now notice what happens when I go to Instagram. I can put a square photo in there, which is going to be just right at where I was at before. And so have to be just a little bit of an adjustment, but that's easy enough to do. And so you can do that from there. Okay. I just think that was really cool. So Eric's asking the question about the font. Let me show you the font here, just because I think I love the fonts that are available in Usign. What I did with this font, and this is it's this Bebas Nouveau font, and it's obviously blue. And then what I did was I put a very small white border around the outside of the letter so that it would show up a little bit better on that very busy background. And then gave it a shadow, and I put the shadow opacity a little bit darker because of the style of background that it's on. And then I put the distance so that it's where your eye hits the top of the font. And that worked out really, really well. And I really like that. That's one of my favorite fonts. So glad you pointed that out, Eric. But that's how I made the modifications to that font. Sometimes this little border around the outside of this, if you make it really tiny, it works out really, really well. What I said, Eric, is that what you do, it's natural for us to read from the top down. And so the first thing I see is the very top of the font. That's just a natural thing. It's not anything that's grossly scientific. It's just natural. I read from the top to the bottom. As I look at that, I look from the top to the bottom. And so I put the shadow so it's at the top of the font, because it's and I'll show you what I mean by that. When I put the shadow down here, it doesn't look the same. Up here, it catches my eye and does that. Does that make sense to everybody? We've talked about shadowing a lot, and I just think that we don't use it very much with the letters, not as much as we probably should. And I think that that's just something to remember, that when you're looking at the font, then I naturally see the shadow above it. If I turn the shadow so it's down below, I don't see it as easily. And I wanted this to stand out. Now, you still get some effect from that, but these shadows that go to the top of that font are kind of the way that we are normal, the way we normally look at that, okay? The P and the H have a little dot above them because I've clicked on that letter. When I go down here, it goes the other way. It's just indicating that I'm clicked on that, okay? Does that make good sense to you, Eva? That I think that's really, really kind of a cool trick for people to remember, is that when I'm trying to make this stand out, if I turn that shadow off, watch what happens when I turn the shadow off. I don't get the same effect. In this case, that shadow really made a difference in how it would look. Okay. And there's just keep this in mind when you're using fonts, particularly when you're using them on a background, that a tiny shadow, it doesn't have to be much, tiny shadow. And oftentimes, if that shadow is going to be on a font, look at it from the top down. Always think about, where does my eye go first when I look at that font? And you can see the difference there. So the questions asked, should shadows usually be black or gray? Let's do this just for fun. I'm going to take this, I'm going to log on to that right here, and I'm going to change the color of this, and I'm going to make it that color right there. Now, I have a dark colored shadow. What happens when I do that? I don't get the same effect. So now let's go over here and we'll find out. So now I'm going to put a gray shadow on. You see a little bit of a difference. I'm going to put a white shadow on it, and you really see a difference. See what I mean? So I love the shadow effect in Uzon. I think it is amazing, and it does a wonderful, wonderful job. Okay. All right, Leah, the name of the font, and you'll have to look at it right there, is right there. Nice, clear, crisp font, good letter spacing, just works out really, really well for these kinds of messages here, okay? Yes, and we talk about lighting angle a lot, Stephen. That's a good point, and it's something to remember, that lighting angle does make a difference. And we did that when we, remember that a few weeks ago when we did the layer of books, and we tweaked the angle as we tweaked the angle of the books, and I thought it was we're playing with the angle there as that shift takes place with the books. And so always keep in mind where your light is coming from. And in this particular case, we're just looking at it as though we're straight down. But there's something to remember about that, Stephen. Let me see if I can do this. I'm going to actually, I've saved this. So let me clear this canvas, and I want to show you something, which I think I've got the ability to do that. Let me see if I've got it in my uploads right here. Again, this is one of those things that you say, it takes a little bit of work to get this so that you're able to answer questions on the fly, because you need to have certain things in place to do that. And here's what I'm looking for right here. Okay, let me get this out of the way for just a moment, and I'm going to do this and clear my canvas, pull this back over here, and show you a little trick with shadows that I think will be something that you might enjoy. Okay, so I'm going to grab a I'm going to do a background. I'm going to do let's find a photo background here that works. We'll put it on this. Okay, is everybody with me? And if I shadow this, I get one effect. Watch what happens. Shadow out there a bit. Oh, wait a minute. I'm not on the right image. If I put the shadow right here, and I can make it a little bit further out, and I can make it significantly darker so it's obvious. Now, that's a lighting issue thing. The question that Stephen's talking about here, a lighting issue. It makes it look like the sleeve that's on the left is laying on the beach. Well, we know better than that. That's not what it's doing. And so I've got to somehow fix that so that it does exactly what I want it to do. Are y'all understanding what I'm saying here? That I have to fix that? Because right now it looks like that left sleeve is laying on the beach. That's not the look that I'm looking for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this. I'm going to duplicate that, and I'm going to match them up perfectly right there. And now I'm going to throw a shadow on the top image, and we're going to do it the other direction. like that. Now I'm going to have to lighten the opacity a little bit so that they match. You see what we've done there? How cool is that? Now I have the shirt looking like it's standing out, which is exactly what I was looking for. But again, that's the very thing that Stephen was talking about. We have to make sure that we keep the angle so that the light direction makes it make sense. And that's what we're trying to do. And so sometimes you've got to be very creative about it. And being very creative is kind of cool. Now, if you do this for me. Don't ask support what I just showed you. Just put it in the group. What was it that Eric said that we did on the webinar? And then, then we'll have an opportunity for everybody to learn. Okay. So that's just a really simple little thing there, but I thought it would be kind of cool for you to know that. And it's a great way to play with the shadows. Okay. Everybody clear? Now let's go to the little thing that I was going to show you about the blog post. All right. What I've done is this. Notice the look of that. Now, that brown is fine with the blue, but if I throw a very, very light filter on top of that, I go to the bottom and grab this cool filter and I turn it down to about 20%. See what happens? Do you see the difference here? Now, this becomes easy to brand because every image that I put in is going to have that slight blue filter on it. And I can take that, which, by the way, makes that image look so much better than this, it isn't even funny. So we'll turn it back on. I'll go back over here with it. Two things that are important. Two things that save me tons of time and increase my workflow. I created this as the title of my blog. I don't know about anybody else, but I always have a little bit of an issue. I always have a little bit of an issue over on this right-hand side because the toolbar comes over here. And that's normal, and that's the way it should be. That's the right place for it. Joanna, my selection for the filter is right here. It's down here at the very bottom. It's called Cool. So this always kind of frustrates me sometimes, especially when I'm trying to position this so that it looks right. That's what I want right there. So guess what I did? I took that text and I buttered it right up against the toolbar. It's going to be in exactly the right place every single time. And simple. It was easy. Now I've fixed the problem. I've taken an issue. What's the terminology for the day? Clickology. I've taken an issue and I took a situation and I turned it into a solution. And that's always so cool to be able to do that. And so I've basically done this by just simply butting that last letter up to that. And so if my text is really small, then I'm going to just take this title and I'm going to bump it right over here, just like that. I'm using that pickup line, and then I grab this and I move it right there. Okay. Very simple, and it keeps things moving very quickly for me. I can generate 25 blog titles and blog post images. What do they call that? They call that the featured image in WordPress. I can generate these featured images. They're going to have the same look. I don't have to worry about making sure this matches stuff, and they're going to have the same look every time. And then that gives me what Eric just mentioned, which was uniformity. But man, it makes a difference when I go to this, because now I've got to make sure that everything matches up. By dropping this colored filter on here and setting that at 20% every time, then I've now got something that works with everything. Okay, so let's play with it for a moment. Let's go over to our graphics, and let's say instead this time what I want to do is I want to have something at a computer. Okay, so what I'm going to do, and y'all remember this, I'll go over here to my replace tool. I'm going to click on this. I'm going to go over to my replace tool. I'm going to click on replace. And I'm going to go over here and click on that image, and boom, right there. Now I'll go back over to my filter area, come down here to cool, make sure that's set at 20%, and it works. Understand? And you can just, Eric nailed it. You can bang those out one right after the other. Now, the question was asked just a minute ago. Let's see, Mary asked the question, what was the reason for doing this? Because I want every one of my featured images to have the same look. I don't want them to be the same images here, but I want them to have the same look. And so all I have to do now is I have to just simply find an image that works. And I like that image. We're going to use that one, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I've clicked here. I'm going to go over here to my replace tool, and I'm going to go down here and do this. And now I've got that slight blue filter over the top of it, and it all matches. What happens if I take the filter off and I go back up here to the original? Doesn't look the same. Does that make sense to everybody? This is a great way to just, as Eric said, just bang out a bunch of these at one time. And I'm just going to scroll through that and find the appropriate image to put in the background. A nice, crisp, sharp, clear, professional looking image. And then I'm going to use my background replace tool, and I'm going to simply make sure that they all have the same look and feel. That's all I'm doing, is I'm using the filter to create continuity. I thought the elephant was cute, but when I scrolled back up there, I didn't see it. So, but do you understand what we're doing? This is so easy, and using the tools that we have available to us, and then working with the things that we thought were obstacles. I've now made it simple. Right? And maybe you say, well, what I want to do for my blog post is I want this to go all the way across. Okay, cool. Then you do that, you click on this, you come over here, and you center that. Not a problem. Create solutions to the challenges. And it's amazing what you'll be able to do. But I loved blue is the color of my theme, and so I decided I would take the filter and I would use it to do the very thing that Jay is talking about right there, and that is to add that consistency to all of my imagery. Because if I have something that's completely different, let me find one here that makes sense, because again, I've got my my image is, let's see, I got a question over here. My image is my image has got different colors. That's a good question, Eric. And yes, Solutionology. That's a good question, Eric. Give me just a second and I will answer that, okay? No, I can't change the letter spacing. So I look for a spacing that I like and I'm comfortable with, and that's what I use. So I'm gonna click on my background, and I'm gonna come over here, and I'm gonna grab my replace tool, and I'm gonna come over here and do this. All right. Now that honestly still is enhanced by that blue filter. Understand? But again, I have to have a consistency in how I do that. So I'm going to keep it right at 19, 20, 21, someplace like that. Okay? This font, in this case, is enigmatic. All right? So Eric's question is really good. What makes me wonder about how many and what kinds of elements create a pattern that defines your look? And I will answer that the very best way that I know how. If you have more than 5, you don't have a look, you have a nightmare. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. My lettering is white. My bar that I'm using here, that bar is always going to be that color blue. Which, by the way, when you look at this blue, and this is what you want to make sure that you do, that blue is transparent. And so this is the reason why I continue to use the same one, and I just use the replace to replace the background. I have 82% opacity on that. It allows it to work really well with what I'm trying to accomplish. And watch what happens when I make it lighter. If I make it lighter, it doesn't have the same effect. If I make it darker, then I really have an issue. Okay? I'm sorry. When I make it darker, then I really have an issue because now it gets in the way. It wouldn't make any difference what filter you chose, Jay. That's a good question. Yeah, the font style, the bar, the color, and the filter. Those are the things that make up the look that I wanted to have for my blog. And I'm just really happy with that position the way that it is. So yes, Jay, if you wanted to use any other filter, you could do that. You could do this filter right here, and you could do the same thing. And you can see what happens when you do that. It causes those reds to pop out a little bit more. My suggestion is you just play with it, figure out what you want to do, but then you create a structure around that, okay? What was the reason for attaching it to the right side? It's what I like. It was a personal preference. So I wanted to attach my hashtag to the lower left-hand side. Most people would put their website address there. I put a hashtag there. I attached it to the right-hand side for the fact that I wanted to put the hashtag on the left-hand side. It's not, there's no magic to this. What's magical is making it consistent. That's what's magical. If I'm scrolling through my news feed and I see something from Copy Blogger, I know immediately it's from Copy Blogger because it always looks the same. Copy Blogger has a standard layout for their blog post. That's what inspired me to do this. They have a standard layout for their blog post, and so I use that. I use a standard layout for my blog post, and do that way. I don't have any idea, Debbie, what the size of the featured image is in WordPress. I think you can do a lot of things because I've had a lot of different sizes over the years. I used Facebook Ad Medium for my featured image size, and Facebook positions it appropriately. And if you will indulge me for just a moment, let me show you what this looks like on my site. And again, it's anything but perfect, but allow me to do this morning, if you would, please. And I believe this one is, nope, that's an old one. Because it's going to take that featured image and it's going to position it over here, okay? But can you see how there's a consistency in the look there? Does that make sense? But I found that as many things as I can do in this Facebook ad medium size, that's a really good format for me. Exactly. Or just keep trying it. See what looks good for you and what you would like to do at that point in time. Okay? So I thought that would be kind of a fun time-saving trick for you that would make things go fast and easy. And so hopefully that will help you and to bring consistency to your brand and be able to make this work. Okay, I'm off to have my lunch with the artist, and I will see you all back here next Friday, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget to share your creations and let us know how we might be able to help you. Okay?